you are not your brain, and you're not just your body either. At least, not if you think of your body as just what's encased within the skin. Because to really understand what's going on inside your body, you would need to understand its history. And its history is as old as the universe. And so understanding the body means understanding its environment, and its environment is a process of evolution. Its environment is an evolutionary history, right? And we're placing organisms not just in a spatial environment, but also a temporal environment, because after all, space and time are not two. Certainly we distinguish them in our common sense experience, and we need to distinguish them, otherwise we wouldn't have two different words. But they're not separable, right? You can't measure one without also presupposing the other. There's no nature at an instant, and there's no passage which is not also extended, right? It goes both ways. So you're not your brain, you're not your body, at least if by body you mean what's enclosed within your skin. If by body you mean the universe entire, then you are that, yes. And you are that not just in space, but in time. And in time, what can seem like a vast emptiness actually becomes, well, ultimately what? But light. Or at least the pure potentiality out of which light at first proceeds. But in some sense, physics has taught us that light doesn't move through space-time. Light is it's the absolute measure of space and time, at least in relativity. And if that is the case, then light's not even really in space or time, but kind of constitutes it in a way. Although I suppose, we're still searching for a connection between light and gravity. Gravity remains mysterious, recedes from our view. But how are we to think who and what we are as more than just brains and more than just isolated bodies, but as microcosmoi, as incarnations of the one, as miniaturizations of the macrocosm? And so when we talk about the history of the universe, in that case, we can't seek to pull rabbits out of hats. What I mean by that is get something out of nothing. And what I mean by that is we shouldn't try to convince ourselves that mind could come out of matter, or that value could come out of vacuity, or that aim could suddenly emerge at some point in the cosmic process, whereas before there was mere, geometric tumbling. We have to really mind our abstractions here. The idea of physical matter is one of the most abstract inventions in the history of human consciousness. It's pure math. It's pure numerical and geometric relationship, tentatively tied to certain key experiments. Sure, but still, those key experiments could be explained in many other ways, right? There are still many other viable alternatives to Einstein's rendering of relativity theory. Whitehead's is one among them. And so the evidence leaves way more theoretical possibilities open on the table. And we have to keep that in mind when we're dealing with the abstractions of physics. It's like, yes, we want to take seriously phenomena like heat, which thermodynamics tries to study, and phenomena like light and energy, which physics tries to study, and phenomena like sound, which, physics also wants to understand. But in each of these cases, there are also artists who want to not just understand, but be able to mold and really participate in, experientially, aesthetically, in light and sound. And warmth as well, to the extent that warmth, again, experientially and not abstractly, is inseparable from a kind of mood and emotion and a sense of comfort or discomfort, right? And light, similarly, is not something that we see. It is the medium through which sight is made possible. What we see is colored surfaces. And it seems as though darkness plays just as much a positive role in the creation of those colored surfaces as does light. And maybe, darkness is just as invisible as light in a sense. You can't see in the dark, right? You need some light. But whereas light is just a revelation, you're bathed in it and you cannot turn away from it. I mean, I guess you could, and then you'd face the dark, right? You'd see your shadow. And the darkness isn't a revelation, it's hidden, it's obscure, kind of like gravity. The weakest force in one sense, but in another sense, just as universal, if not more so than anything else, any other force or feeling in the universe. Because again, gravity is first and foremost a feeling that we undergo, that we experience, right? Our own sense of heaviness, weight. And, we've developed the abstraction of mass, but fundamentally, we're never going to be able to understand what we mean by that without making some reference to our own embodied sense of heaviness and momentum, being a moving body. And so when we try to understand the history of the universe, which we need to in order to understand who and what we are, we have to approach it concretely, intimately even, as part of our body. We are a single unbroken developmental process from the very beginning. So if there's something in us now, at least at the level of our ontology, it must have been there from the beginning. Now, at the level of our phenomenology, perhaps, at the level of our phenotype, of course, there's all sorts of new capacities and things that have been learned, skills and capacities that have been acquired that you could even characterize as emergent, as creatively emergent. But ontologically, in terms of what the world is made of, you can't just pretend like you can pull a rabbit out of a hat, right, and get meaning out of motion. Because motion is already meaningful, right? That's the deeper point here. And I think there's a kind of convergence on this sort of a cosmology that I see happening, and we're just trying to work out the details. So I don't mean to be antagonistic here. I think we're all more or less on the same page, right? I think so.